Hey guys, welcome back to the FunBikes YouTube channel. I'm Finn and today I'm going to be showing you the build and assembly process for our MXR 1400w. This build process will be the exact same for your MXR 1000w and 1800w. So let's get this thing out of the box so it can go from this to this. Let's get into it. So now I've got the bike out of the box, I'm now going to show you what came in the box and what you're going to need it for. So starting off, you'll receive your forks, charger, bar pad and bar pad cover, your manual, which I highly suggest you read through as it shows how to maintain your bike and keep its longevity as long as possible. Number board, your rear mud flap, front axle with the two spacers on it, your front wheel, your front mud guard, your parts bag, which I'll run through in a minute explaining what's in it, and finally your tool bag, which if you have your own tools, I highly recommend using, but if you don't, these will do the job just fine. So now I'm going to explain to you what's in the parts bag, and then after that we can move on with the build. So now I'm going to explain to you what came in the parts bag in detail and what they're going to be used for. So over here, we've got your two top clamp bolts for your handlebars with the 4 bolts you'll need for that. Rear shock nut and bolt. You've got your 3 little bolts here, or screws, for your front mud guard. And here we've got 2 little screws, and these will be fitted into your plastics at the front. You've also got a speed switch tool, and you've also got your keys. Let's get into the build. So the tools you'll need for this build assembly process will be a ratchet, a 13mm socket, you may need an adapter, a 17mm spanner, 14mm spanner, a 13mm spanner, a 4mm Allen key, a 5mm Allen key, a 6mm Allen key, and a Phillips/crosshead screwdriver. You'll also need a knife. So now I've explained all the parts that came in the box and we've got the bike on the stand ready to be built. The first step we're going to be doing is the forks. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you want to get a 6mm Allen key, and obviously you're going to want to grab your forks. So we're going to grab a fork. You want to loosen the bolts off first because there is a little protector. You want to loosen that off. That should tie it out. We don't need this, you can put that in the bin. So once you've loosened this one off, you can loosen this one off. Sometimes they can be loose, sometimes they can be tight. What you want to do is you want to grab your handlebars and untangle them, like so. You want to make sure these wires on this side sit there, and these two on the other side, like so. So you're going to lean them forwards. Make sure the brake's not in here, we don't want that through the gap. So now you can grab your fork, which as you can see, this one doesn't have any holes for the brake, so we know this is for the right side. So you want to slide this up, like so. And you want to make sure you can see just a little bit of gold like that, and then we can start tightening. So and then we can make sure they're nice and tight, like that. So now we can grab the other fork and we'll do the same process. So loosen off the bolts, like that, and we can slide this one up. And again, just a bit of gold, and then we can start tightening. And again, you want to make sure these are as tight as possible, like so. So now that's done, what we're going to do next is we're going to make sure this is tight. So let's cut to me doing this. So now we're going to tighten this stem bolt as it does come loose. So for this, you're going to need a nice big ratchet and a 30mm socket. So all you want to do, put it on the top. Just want to make sure it's nice and tight. Some of them are tight, some can be quite loose, you just want to double check. So now that's tight, we can now move on to assembling the handlebars. So to assemble the handlebars, nice and simple, all you're going to need is a 6mm Allen key, and you'll need your 2 top clamps from earlier and your 4 bolts. So you want to grab 2 bolts and 1 clamp at the moment, put them on the seat. The handlebars, you want to flip round, put here, and you can see these ridges, they want to sit perfectly where the clamps will be. So you want to take your clamp, put it on top, and you want to put these screws in finger tight for now. Once they're in, you can then grab the second top clamp and the other 2 bolts, do the same for the other side. So once you've got your handlebars with the clamps on, again you want to make sure you can't see the ridges because that means it's perfect, and we're going to want to tighten them. Make sure they're tight as possible. Once you've tightened them, you just want to give them a little double check, and if they don't move, they're nice and tight. So now we can move on to the next part of the build process. So moving on to the next part of the assembly, we're going to be doing your rear shock and your rear mud flap. So for this, you're going to need a 5mm for the rear mud flap. And for the rear shock, you will need a 13 and a 14mm spanner. You'll also need your rear shock bolt and your rear shock nut. So the first thing you're going to want to do is grab your 5mm Allen key, and if you look under here, you'll see two 5mm little screws. You want to take these out. Now you can grab your mud flap. As you can see here, there's a little chunk missing. This will be the side that sits next to the chain so it doesn't catch. So you want to put one of the bolts through, two holes at the top, and you want to make sure this is sat nicely and nice and tight. I'm going to do this with the other bolt as well, like so. So now you want to grab 13 and your 40mm spanner, again the nut and the bolt. So now you want to put your shock through the mud flap, lift the wheel up, like so. Now, it can be a bit fiddly, trying to line this up, but once you get it, like so, you should just be able to slide it straight through, like that. So now, you put the nut on the other end, like that. So this end, the nut end will be your 14mm spanner, and the bolt end will be 13. So now, like always, you want to make sure this is as tight as you physically can get it, like so. And with these two installed, we can now move on with the build process. Right, so moving on to the next part of the process, we're going to be doing your front mud guard. For this, you're going to want to grab your three 5mm screws from earlier and a 5mm Allen key. So, as you can see up here, you'll see one hole here and two holes at the back. These will correlate to this front middle hole and these two at the back. So, what you're going to want to do, put the screw through, and you just want this to be finger tight for now. Now you want to grab your 5mm Allen key. You want to make sure these are nice and tight, like that. So now once them three are tight, your front mud guard is installed, and we can now move on to the next part. So moving on with the assembly process, we are now going to be installing these two little metal brackets which will hold the plastics together. So for this, you're going to want 4mm Allen key and your two 4mm screws from earlier. So what you're going to want to do is make sure that these metal brackets aren't facing this way. You want them to be snug against the plastic, like so. So just put your bolt through, like so. And that's as simple. That's just tightening these up. So now they're tight, we can now move on to the next part of the assembly process. So moving on to the next part of the assembly process, we're going to be fitting your number board. For this, you're going to need your number board and a 4mm Allen key. So we're going to start off by taking out these two 4mm screws here, like so. So now we can align these two bits here into these two gaps here, making sure your brake line stays in front of the number board, like so. So now what you want to do, once that's lined up on top, you can then screw these in, or one of them in just for now, just to hold the number board in place, like that. So now the number board should stay there, or you can get the other one in. So now they're both in, you can now make sure they're nice and tight, like so. So now that's on, we can now move on to one of the nearer to the end assembly processes, the front wheel and the front brake. So moving on to the next part, like I said, we're going to be doing your front wheel and your front brake. So obviously you're going to want to grab your front wheel from earlier, your front axle with the two spacers, a 5mm Allen key, a 17mm spanner and a 14mm spanner. So starting off, you're going to want to grab your front axle, take off the nut and the spacers. Now as you can see here, there's a slight difference in size. This one is a bit smaller than the other one. So you want to grab the smaller one, your front axle. So you want to slide your axle through, just enough for the spacer to hang on. So once that's there, I'm going to grab your wheel, and you want to make sure your brake disc is on the right side. So, like this. So you want to slide it on, push through the axle until again it's just hanging through, like this. Then you can put the other spacer on, push it back, and then the axle can go all the way through, like so. Once it's through like this, you can chuck the nut on, and you can start tightening. So this nut side will be a 17mm, and the other side will be the 14. So let's make sure this is nice and tight. There we go. Once that's nice and tight, we can now move on to the front brake. So you want to grab your 5mm Allen key. You take out these two 5mm here. There's one. And same with the other one, like so. And there'll also be a little spacer in here. Pull that out. That can go in the bin. So now you want to slide this gap here in between the pads onto your disc, which should mean these two holes will line up with these two. So just slide it on, like so. You can see that top hole's lined up. So you just want to put your bolt back in there, finger tight for now. Same with the bottom one, finger tight, like so. So now you want to make sure these are also as tight as you can get them, like so. So now that's on, we can now move on to the next part of the assembly process. So moving on from your front brake, this is a nice little simple step. This little bracket, you want to get a crosshead screwdriver. Just take this right side screw out, like that. You'll also want to loosen off the left side, but you don't need to take it out. So now, grab your brake line, put it in the middle, like so. Put the bracket back over, and the screw back in the hole, and do this up nice and tight. So now that's on, you can move up to the top. You can pull the brake line, push it through this gap, and it should clip in like that. Just looks a bit neater, a bit nicer. So moving on to one of the final stages of your assembly, you're going to want to attach your bar pad and bar pad cover. This is nice and simple. You want to take off the bar pad cover, and this bar pad just slots straight onto the top clamps we installed earlier. And the bar pad cover looks like this. Your little Velcro bit here with the little gap, that will go through the front, round to the back, and then it'll attach on itself like so. And it's as easy as that, so we can now move on to your lever angles. So moving on to one of the final stages, we're going to be adjusting your lever angles as they do come a bit pointy uppy. So all you need, 4mm Allen key, and all you're going to want to do is this bolt here. You're going to want to loosen this off like so, which will allow you to push the lever angle, or the lever of the angle down. This one can be a bit annoying, so you can just push the little control out of the way. And for this is completely your choice and preference of what angle you would like. I personally like to have it a straight arm like this. I personally just think that's ideal, but obviously completely up to what you would like. So once you've got the right angle, again, you might have to adjust this to be able to retighten it like that. So now you want to tighten it up, make sure it's nice and tight, so the angle doesn't move when you're riding, like so. Now once this is done, you can repeat this exact same process, obviously without this bit in the way, on this side. So now you've fully finished your assembly of the bike, except from one thing. You can now do one of my personal favourite parts. You get to peel off these nice sticker protectors. So let's start peeling. So now you've fully finished your assembly process, there's one more thing you need to do before you can take this beast on a ride, and that's a full nut and bolt check. So now I'm going to run you through every single bolt on this bike that you're going to need to check before you take it on a ride. So starting at the back, we're going to check the rear brake, the rear brake carrier, your rear swing arm bolt. You want to check your foot pegs, you want to check your kickstand. Again, you can check your rear shock if you want to. You want to check these few plastic bolts around. You want to check your fork bolts again. And again, you want to check your front brake carrier, your front axle. So moving on to the other side, it's pretty much the exact same. So you want to check this bolt here. You can check this bolt and this bolt just to make sure your chain guard's nice and tight. Again, foot peg, your few plastic bolts. You want to check 2 fork bolts again, and you want to check this side as well. And you can check these if you want to as well. And while we're on this side of the bike, I will show you how to get power to this bike, which will be just this little plug here. It's as simple as just plugging it in. It will make that popping noise. That is completely normal. That doesn't mean anything bad. And once it's plugged in, you can tuck it away like so. So now what you can do, you can grab your keys, and now you've got the power, you can plug the keys in as a final test to make sure the bike is in fully function operation. As you can see, it is. So now you can take this beast on a ride. But before you do take this thing for a ride, please make sure you or your child have got their protective equipment on. You can find it in our bio or in our description. And with that, you have fully completed your assembly. If you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll personally answer them myself as quick as I can. I hope I've been a helping hand today. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.